Another most interesting day, though of a different nature. Today was spent witnessing the arrangements for dealing with the wounded. I spent the morning at an advanced dressing station on the south bank of the river. It was in a cellar, beneath the ruins of a house, about 400 yards from the front line, and under heavy shell fire. As close at hand was the remains of what had been a wood, which was being used as a concentration point for reserves. The cover afforded by this so-called wood was extremely slight, and the troops were concentrating for the innumerable attacks and counter-attacks which were taking place under shell fire. This caused the surgeon in charge of the cellar to describe the wood as our main supply station. I entered the cellar at 8 a.m., taking advantage of a partial lull in the shelling, but a machine gun bullet viciously flipped into a wooden beam at the entrance as I ducked to go in. I was not sorry to get underground. A sloping path brought me into the cellar, on one side of which sappers were digging away the earth to increase the accommodation. The illumination consisted of candles set in bottles and some electric hand lamps. The center of the cellar was occupied by 2 portable operating tables. Rarely untenanted during the 3 hours I spent in this hell. The atmosphere, for there was no ventilation, stank of sweat, blood, and chloroform. By a powerful effort, I countered my natural tendency to vomit and looked around me. The sides of the cellar were lined with figures on stretchers. Some lay still and silent. Others writhed and groaned. At intervals, one of the attendants would call the doctor's attention to one of the still forms. A hasty examination ensued, and the stretcher and its contents were removed. A few minutes later, the stretcher, empty, returned. The surgeon explained to me that there was no room for corpses in the cellar. Business, he genuinely remarked, was too brisk at the present crucial stage of the great battle. The first feelings of revulsion have been mastered. I determined to make the most of my opportunities, as I have always felt that the naval officer is at a great disadvantage in war as compared with his military brother, in that he but rarely has a chance of accustoming himself to the unpleasant spectacle of torn flesh and bones. This morning there was no lack of material, and many of the intestinal woods were peculiarly revolting, so that at lunchtime, when another convenient lull in the torrent of shell fire enabled me to leave the cellar, I felt thoroughly hardened. In fact, I had assisted in a humble degree at 1 or 2 operations. I had lunch at the 11th Army Medical Headquarters mess, and it was a sumptuous meal to which I did full justice. After lunch, whilst waiting to be motored to a field hospital, I happened to see a battalion of Silesian troops about to go up to the front line. It was rather a curious feeling that one was looking at men, each in himself a unit of civilization, and yet many of whom were about to die in the interests thereof. Their faces were an interesting study. Some looked careless and debonair, and seemed to swing past with a touch of recklessness in their stride. Others were grave and serious, and seemed almost to plod forward to the dictates of an inevitable fatalism. The field hospital, where we met some very charming nurses, on one of whom I think I created a distinct impression, was not particularly interesting. It was clean, well organized, and radiated the efficiency inseparable from the German army.